what's up, everybody? Chris Trapasso here for the post-Week 5 episode of the Nameless Football Show. I'm from CBSSports.com, NFL draft analyst, young player analyst. You may know me from the Practice Squad Power Rankings that I founded in 2019, wearing the shirt that my wife's Etsy shop made for me. Do that every single Friday, rank the top 10, really top 16 Practice Squad players. And apparently, I don't know, does TikTok suppress live videos? If you say link in bio, I've seen a lot of videos that say that happens. But anyway, it's linked in my bio, the scouting grade book. You get your own personalized, private, password-protected scouting grade book. It's a system that I created to evaluate all prospects every single year for CBS Sports. The big board builds itself, and everything's customizable. There's weighted skill and talent categories. Really, if you're starting to get into draft season and starting to write down some notes on players or want to watch college football on Saturday more with a purpose to look ahead to the draft, the Scouting Gradebook will help you. It helped me significantly. The first year I was at CBS Sports, 2017, 2018, that really important draft class with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. That draft class, I did not have a Scouting Gradebook. After that, I realized I need to organize this a lot easier and a lot better, make it more streamlined. So I devised and created over many months and tweaked it over the last 3 years, the Scouting Gradebook. You can look at everything that you need in the link in my bio. You can go to scoutinggradebook.com and get more information, get a tutorial, whatever you need. It's all there. All right, now let's get into just some of the guidelines. Obviously, every single week, I will answer any questions that you have. Although I will say, being my own show and I'm flying solo here every week, I don't want to turn this into a fantasy show where you ask me to grade your trade or who do I start. Because again, I don't know the entire makeup of your league, who you're trading with, who the other owner has on their bench, what their running back position looks like. So if you desperately want to get in a fantasy question, I'm a nice guy. I'll answer. But I don't want to turn this into a total fantasy show. We get Jets and Packers, which is suddenly kind of spicy. We get Eagles, Cowboys. Like, holy crap, those are probably two of the top 5 teams in the NFL. They can really get after the passer. The offensive lines are playing well. The Eagles made all these moves in the offseason. The Cowboys lose Tyron Smith, lose Dak Prescott, and they're 4-0 with Cooper Rush. All right, if any questions, I'll get to those first. I got one from Charles. What J.K. Dobbins doing this year since he's been back? He didn't have a huge performance against the Bengals, but me as an evaluator, I'm always watching like what a player does individually. Like it's easy in today's NFL and just in today's society. Everyone plays fantasy football. You look at the stat line, didn't have a great game, didn't put up big points for me in my fantasy league. And I get that if you're upset about that. But watching J.K. Dobbins, some of the cuts that he made in that Sunday Night Football win over the Bengals, I was super impressed. I mean, not impressed because it was J.K. Dobbins doing it, just the fact that he was coming off an ACL tear. He looks fully back. Don't be surprised if soon J.K. Dobbins starts to hit some big plays and becomes more of the bell cow, workhorse, whatever you want. Maybe I can throw in, he can take the lion's share of the carries in Baltimore to get all the animal references in there. And looks like the J.K. Dobbins that the Ravens thought they were getting when they picked him on day 2 a few years ago, and just really the running back that he was at Ohio State. He's one of my favorite young runners in the NFL. Just a few cuts behind the line of scrimmage in tight spaces where he's a big, compact power back, but if he's making those cuts, he's going to be a special player in the NFL if he can stay healthy. What do you think the Colts should do at quarterback? What can they do? I mean, they signed Matt Ryan. That game last Thursday night, like setback football, I don't know how long. I mean, it was brutal. I felt almost bad for Matt Ryan that he was 38 years old, taking all these hits behind that offensive line over and over again, and the arm looked pretty much dead, just did not look like he had any juice left in that arm. It was not live whatsoever, as they say. I don't think they can do anything. I think they have to wait until next year. There's 2 teams, one in the AFC, one in the NFC, that I've been so surprised has not looked at the draft for a quarterback in the first 2 days of the draft, like the last 4 or 5 years. Carolina Panthers and Indianapolis Colts. I think Chris Ballard, the GM, I don't want to say he's on the hot seat. The Colts were in the playoffs 2 years ago. last year's collapse and everything that went wrong and how the Carson Wentz trade transpired and how they cut the cord very early, only 1 year into the Carson Wentz experiment. It cost them a lot of draft capital, early draft capital. They could have added some playmakers on offense, more secondary members on defense. And now the Matt Ryan experience hasn't been that fun through the first 5 weeks of the season. Now, they're lucky that they did get that win. They were able to eke it out on the road against another AFC, probably wild card contender. And I still think the Colts will compete in the AFC South. That's not incredibly difficult, but the Colts need to look at the draft for a quarterback. That's just the one thing that has strangely been avoided by the Chris Ballard regime, and now he's not the coach anymore, the Carolina Panthers regime over the last couple of years, that they're always, we wanted to go this direction. If you got to trade up for a quarterback, do it. Like, no one is going to fault you if you trade up and you pick a Justin Herbert instead of picking Derek Brown. I certainly think Matt Rule would still be the coach if Justin Herbert was his quarterback. Matt Ryan is washed. I don't think that's crazy to think that. And wait, one last point on the Colts. I tweeted it during the game last Thursday night. A lot of teams, like the Rams, probably chief among them, the offensive line hasn't been good. And it's easy to say, hey, look, like, what's wrong with your offensive line? Stafford looks bad. They're injured. And there's pretty much minimal quality offensive line depth in the NFL. So if you're getting into your second and third string blockers, you're going to be in trouble. The Colts were pretty much playing their starting offensive line and got absolutely offense yet. But I did get on one of my videos today, I got a comment like, can you please review him? I certainly will. Probably do it either tonight or tomorrow because I loved Ike Ekwonu. I thought he was a little bit behind as a pass protector, but the athleticism, the balance, the sheer power in his frame coming out of NC State this past April, I really liked him as a prospect. I mean, I don't know if I would have picked him as high as the Panthers did. But if he's taking strides, that will help the offense. I mean, we're going to probably get Sam Darnold this weekend, so there's only so much a left tackle can do. But to move forward to the next regime as they turn the page from Matt Rule to Steve Wilks and then probably another head coach next year, it's certainly a good building block to have a quality, young, relatively inexpensive left tackle. And if Ike Ekwonu is turning the corner and kind of really acclimating to the NFL, that's a great sign for Carolina. How did you feel about roughing the passer call yesterday? Okay, I got to talk about this. Everyone's talking about it. There's a difference between it being a bad call by the refs and the rule being bad. I thought the Tom Brady roughing the passer, or that was called on Grady Jarrett, that was a horrible call. And I tweeted almost instantly, that was the worst call of roughing the passer that I have ever seen. And maybe, I mean, who knows, in the history of the NFL. Because Grady Jarrett did not hit Tom Brady late. He did not hit him low. He didn't hit him too high in the head or neck area. Tom Brady technically wasn't defenseless, but I don't really even think defenselessness, if that's a word, factors in when it comes to quarterbacks. And Grady Jarrett did not land with his whole body weight on Tom Brady. So that call in and of itself was horrible. Now, that last part is a perfect segue into Chris Jones last night on Derek Carr. I didn't love the call necessarily, but it was more to me about the rule being kind of silly and stupid and not fair to defensive linemen and pass rushers. That, yes, I understand that Chris Jones made an amazing athletic play to actually have the ball in his grasp as Derek Carr was going down. He strip sacked it and somehow got the ball out of Derek Carr's grasp as the two were falling to the turf. But Chris Jones did land kind of belly flop right, called it, and it would have been completely fine. No one, even on the Raiders or their fans, would have said, hey, that was a roughing the passer. But in watching it, and it's different in slow-mo than live, he did land with his full body weight on Derek Carr. So I did not think it was nearly as bad of a call as Grady Jarrett on Tom Brady. The one thing I tweeted today is this feels a lot like 2018 when this was an issue early in the season. There was a play, I believe Clay Matthews on Kirk Cousins early in a Packers-Vikings game that did not seem like a roughing the passer, that was called roughing the passer, and I believe it led to the Vikings winning that game, or was Clay Matthews on another team at that point? Either way, I think he might have been on a different team. But anyway, I do remember that being an issue early in the 2018 season, and I think it was even earlier than this, like week of the season. So we saw it with the concussion protocol with Tua Tagovailoa. I'm glad that happened. I mean, feels a little weird initially that a league is kind of tweaking a rule in the middle of a season, but that is fine because it's all about player safety. This kind of is in reference to player safety too. It's kind of in the other way where this might lead to more quarterbacks, I don't know about getting hurt, but just not getting those free yards down the road. And it's just too difficult. There's so much that goes on in today's NFL with the rules that makes it incredibly challenging for a cornerback to make a play down the field, and now for a edge rusher or a defensive tackle or a blitzer to hit the quarterback without getting a 15-yard penalty. The league needs to come out like it did in 2018 and just say, look, we're going to scale this back. We're still going to keep an eye on it, but we're not as watchful of an eye and not as strict on the roughing the passer call, because clearly that can totally change the outcome of a game, of a division, of playoff seeding. I hope it does not happen in the playoffs. That would be a disaster. So hopefully the league does right by all the defenders that they've made it incredibly hard for over the past decade with all the rule changes and say, look, we're going to scale it back. Thoughts on Irv Smith at Alabama and in the NFL? Irv Smith, I liked him. Was it 2019 or 2020 draft? I liked him. I didn't love him. I wouldn't have picked him in the second round like the Vikings did, though we are starting to see him be more, I don't want to say a central point or central part of the offense, because that's certainly Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, but he's getting his 4, 5, 6 targets a game. He is the tight end one there in Minnesota, and if anything, he's good after the catch. He's not going to stretch the seam. He's not going to make ridiculous high point grabs down the seam with high level of regularity, but he's good after the catch. He's smaller. He's kind of like a big running back. I want to see the Vikings utilize him on some of those play action rollouts that are the staple of the Kyle Shanahan and down to the Kevin O'Connell offense. Bootleg, stretch run to the left, then bootleg it back to the right and get Irv Smith the ball in space. He's not the most electric player in space, but for the tight end position, based on what I remember watching at Alabama and a little bit earlier in his NFL career before some of these injuries hit, Irv Smith can make defenders miss, and he's got good contact balance because he's not this tall, high center of gravity, 6'5" tight end. He's like 6'2", 240. You want to get that guy in space, kind of like a Charles Clay or a Delaney Walker to go back a couple of years. Those type of tight ends that can really work well underneath, turn a 2-yard bootleg, throw into the flat into a 7, 8, 9-yard gain, and be that part of the Vikings offense. They're always protecting Brady. Yeah, I mean, I saw something that he actually hasn't gotten like the most roughing the passer calls, but that call was Jerome Boger too. I don't think he has got the greatest reputation in terms of the refereeing crews in the NFL. So if you get Jerome Boger for your team's game, there could be some bad calls. There's more likely going to be some bad calls in that game than there would be for some others. I got JT and Njoku for Aaron Jones and Olave. Thoughts? I need a tight end. I got JT and Njoku for Aaron Jones and Olave. I'm fine with that. I think that's good. JT's going to bounce back. Njoku has become, there's been that tier that we've been looking for, that secondary tier behind Kelsey, Waller, and Kittle, and I guess Mark Andrews now. Like, who's in that second tier in fantasy for tight ends? I think it's David Njoku now. David Njoku's in there. Dallas Goedert's probably in there. He might even be moving into that elite category. We haven't seen George Kittle have the type of George Kittle production that we've been accustomed to early in his NFL career. I like that trade for you. All right, one more fantasy question, then I want to get to a few more topics and any other non-fantasy questions. Again, I'm Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, NFL Draft, and Young Player Analyst. This is the Nameless Football Show. Should I trade Tony Pollard and Debo, Jeff Wilson for Kamara? Should I trade Tony Pollard and Debo Samuel for Jeff Wilson and Kamara? I would just I think Tony Pollard will get more carries as the season progresses. in Dallas. I saw a funny, that could even be something, and I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble here with tampering, but that could be Jerry Jones, which I don't even know if that would be considered tampering, because I think if it's during a game and a coach or a GM is trying to like influence Jerry Jones, who's watched a ton of Cowboys football since the late 80s as the owner, would watch those games and say, yeah, Tony Pollard's probably the more efficient option. My bad, I meant Curtis Samuel. Okay, Tony Pollard and Curtis Samuel and Jeff Wilson for Kamara. I would not, I like Kamara, but not 3 for 1. I wouldn't do that with Pollard. Curtis Samuel's been healthy and has made some plays down the field for the Commanders. And I think Jeff Wilson, as Elijah Mitchell returns for the 49ers, probably will scale back his usage. But I think he's done enough to earn the trust of Kyle Shanahan, and he's hit some big plays for the 49ers. Johnny, what's up, man? Any questions? Certainly drop them in. A few TikToks that I posted over the last couple of days. I got a request for Dalvin Tomlinson. So I go in to watch the film, and I'll admit, I go in with not with the draft. I really try not to do it, but I go in with preconceived notions about Dalvin Tomlinson. I think he's been a quiet part of why the Vikings have started off as well as they have, that it's not just Danielle Hunter, it's not just Zadarius Smith, it's Harrison Phillips, the free agent acquisition from the Bills, and the fact that they're getting pass rush from their nose tackle up the middle. He's been really good. They were almost a couple games under 500. I would try to trade him. I think the situations when they're live and say, whoa, 38 ton of. I don't grade these guys the first and second year quarterbacks that I do every single Tuesday for CVS or C+ for Kenny Pickett. I should. Carson Wentz, who is under the bus as blatantly as is not top of the league, or he may even be at the Vikings. Oh, Jack. Well, there was no one there after the cut. He showed that. A few other guys that just, as I'm watching film, that stick out to me.